In this peculiar world, Earth is safeguarded by an inexplicable entity known as the SCP Foundation, a group of highly skilled individuals dedicated to securing, containing, and protecting Earth and its inhabitants from the abnormal and abhorrent creatures plaguing our reality. But these anomalous entities aren't limited to just our planet. Oh no, they stretch far into the galaxy and into the abyss of imagination and unfathomable destructive power. From this abyss came a newborn, evacuated from his doomed planet. He was originally meant to touch down on a sparse part of the planet. He was meant to conquer, but through some tampering from a sentient robotic SCP, he was instead redirected into one of the SCP's Foundation's most formidable sites. There, the newborn Saiyan faced an overwhelming resistance she failed to subdue. Instead of erasing this young child from existence due to his unpredictable and dangerous power, the director of the site instead chose to house this Saiyan and give him an SCP classification, so that they could study his physiology and very nature and even use him for their own benefit. But they never could anticipate his ever-evolving anomalous properties, which led the young Saiyan to escape, ultimately leading to a clash between SCP-9001 and SCP-682, which again the young Saiyan failed to subdue. Although the Foundation were able to recontain the hard-to-destroy lizard, they weren't able to stop it from evolving and copying a technique from their new SCP, the ability to sense and produce Ki, also known as life energy, the fuel of power that every living being has. SCP-682 then proceeded to escape and set loose a gigantic beam of immense power directed towards SCP-9001. With the help of his new friend, SCP-204, the Saiyan child was able to redirect the beam away from the main facility and into space. As he recovered from the beam struggle, the alarm system went off and warned of the various SCPs set free, leading to a containment breach. SCP-9001 and SCP-204, being the only reasonable and good-natured SCPs, were set with the immeasurable task of preventing any SCP from leaving the main site until backup could arrive. The duo was soon separated by SCP-106, who claimed his first victim as the site director, but instead of killing him, he tortured him relentlessly. SCP-9001 ran into various SCPs as he went further down into the facility, where he fought a pack of SCP-939s and even SCP-173, which he befriended. But as the Saiyan was trying to make his way towards SCP-682, he was ambushed by SCP-096, who proceeded to critically injure and maim, sending SCP-9001 unconscious. Meanwhile, SCP-204 fought and evaded SCP-049 and ran into SCP-500, which are sensu bean-like pills, which he proceeded to force-feed to SCP-9001 as he held off the other SCPs. When the Saiyan warrior recovered, he thanked his friend for the assistance before being witness to his death as SCP-173 broke through his defenses and swiftly dealt a fatal blow to SCP-204, having just witnessed his friend's demise, receiving a Senkai boost and being surrounded by unimaginable power. SCP-9001's Saiyan genes had to compensate. SCP-9001 quickly ascended in power and achieved the legendary transformation of a Super Saiyan. He made quick work of the monsters, not outright overpowering them and defeating them, but doing enough so that they could be recaptured. Some years pass, and SCP-9001 makes friends with MTF Squad Omega 7 as they were sent to deal with SCP-088. Goku was ordered to stay and be debriefed on an incoming threat elsewhere on a distant planet. SCP-2399 made a deal with Vegeta, the Prince of all Saiyans, promising him a wish, and now the Saiyan duo of Nappa and Vegeta are making their way towards Earth and are set to arrive in exactly 1 year. Inside a secluded and dark room, the O5 Council discuss various things about their foundation and the incoming threat they are about to face. They debrief SCP-9001, also known as Goku, on his heritage and the incoming Saiyans that are approaching. SCP-9001 isn't astonished by this revelation, as he has always been treated differently from everyone around him, while those who aren't classified as an SCP. Instead, he asks about his teammates' whereabouts and what they're up to. His question is ignored, or perhaps not even heard, as all of the members are discussing at length the threat they are about to face in a year's time. We've dealt with reality-ending beings. Why should we have to worry about a couple of monkeys? These monkeys should be about 100 times stronger than the SCP-9001's incident. They're world conquerors with the ability to destroy planets. We shouldn't take them lightly. They're targeting us specifically. If they're even able to destroy one of our facilities, they'll let loose a bunch of SCPs into the world. It's simply a risk we cannot take. We have to eradicate them before they land. We have to give them battle. You read yesterday's report. The world conquerors aren't the only problem. It's who they're working The evil space tyrant, Freiza. We have to capture them and extract some sort of information from them. If they're the lackeys, then a being 1,000 times more powerful than them, with an army capable of conquering galaxies, forget the facilities. We have to prepare for war. If worst comes to worst, we can always unleash the old man, send him hurling their way, and let him wreak havoc. There are plenty of SCPs we can send their way, which would annihilate. The only problem would be the annihilation of us as well. I don't know if we could recontain the monsters like SCP-682 or SCP-106. The only reason we stood a chance was because of SCP-9001. The only reason they got loose in the first place was because of 9001. It was our fault. We couldn't anticipate 9001's ever-evolving anomalous properties. They continued to throw around ideas about how they could deal with the threat, most of them being overtly complicated, getting the whole world involved and even weaponizing the most dangerous SCPs, but instead they settled on their only reasonable option: take them away from the Earth with an SCP that takes them to a different dimension, then utilize MTF Omega-7 and especially SCP-9001 to fend off and extract the Saiyan duel, while MTF Tau-5, a squad of immortal cyborgs, delivers a fatal blow, while the rest of their squads defend all of their sites and areas, and under no circumstances should they yield any inch of site ground or any SCP for that matter. Now you may be wondering, how did the SCP Foundation even get the knowledge of the Saiyans? The SCP Foundation already had an inkling about Goku's race. They knew that a warrior-like species capable of emitting immense power was somewhere out there in space, but the real information was leaked to them by SCP-2399. SCP-2399's real goal is to kill the evil space tyrant for something that he did to him. He despises the Saiyans for working for him, but he has grown a weird attachment towards Goku. From observing him through SCP-204 or the original drone that redirected Goku towards the SCP Foundation, he also doesn't like the Foundation's scene as they have tried to destroy him. SCP-2399 was able to get a vast array of information on a lot of SCPs that the Foundation is aware of. One of the more powerful ones is one in particular that can grant wishes, though he hasn't told the Foundation as to the motive of the Saiyan invasion, but SCP-2399 is trying to acquire that SCP for himself so he could wish for the full mobility and completion of his body, traveling at well over double the speed of light on their way to Earth with his Saiyan prince and his companion. They knew they had to be patient to get their wish. Although the Saiyan pods were fast, the small planet they called Earth was far away, unknowingly fought off. The strange, sentient construction had tipped off the Saiyans about a foundation made to secure, contain, and protect the inhabitants of their planet from the abnormal. The way SCP-2399 explained anomalies to Vegeta made the prince laugh. The planet was filled with weaklings. If they needed to protect themselves from the pursuit of power, they were just weak, meek sheep ready to be conquered. The impossible was completely possible through the SCP Foundation. The sentient constructoid explained that the SCP Foundation housed anomalies that plagued not only the Earth, but ones that also came from outside. Strange creatures and objects were for some reason or another attracted to this far pit, strange piece of rock, but he gave a strict warning to Vegeta about the various monsters that the SCP Foundation held, reality benders and godlike beings under containment. He forbids him from pushing Earth to its very limits, or else face the wrath of these beings. Of course, this only inflates Vegeta's ego. He laughs at the thought of a weak planet housing godlike beings. He ignores the construction's advice and instead prepares for the full annihilation of Earth's military and subjugation of its population, and his wish to become immortal and finally put an end to Frieza. During the debriefing, Goku was frustrated and tired. He couldn't correct them as he never used his real name once, a name given to him by his friend Iris, his teammate SCP-105. Goku walked down the hall in his white key, and he heard the door on their further hall decompress and soft sobbing. He sensed his teammates' key signatures, all but one, Abel's or SCP-076. Goku loved sparring with him. Abel was a lot more durable and a lot more smarter than his usual matches he had throughout the years. His fighting techniques were both ancient and ferocious, but Goku was always forced to fight him in his base form due to the lack of power on Abel's end. He knew that they were sent out on a secret mission invasion, but he could not sense their key signature from here due to a new key signature blocker developed by the SCP Foundation in preparation for the Saiyan invasion. So I won't explain in detail what happens here, just know that I kind of want to include Gohan. So after Abel's death at SCP-105's own hand, she's really sad, so she and Goku make Gohan, I guess. In a year's time, Goku and the SCP Foundation prepared for the Saiyan arrival, preparing obstacles and threats for the Saiyans to overcome before they could meet SCP-9001. With Goku's family safely secured in one of their sites, the Saiyans were going to come into the SCP's Foundation's own turf, and it wouldn't make it easy for them to conquer their planet. So not only does the SCP Foundation have to protect their sites to make sure no SCPs escape, they also have to neutralize Vegeta and Nappa, while only being able to use their MTF squads and their Thalmio SCPs. How could they possibly achieve this? A short time to prepare, the SCP Foundation will try to defend the Earth at any cost from this XK end of the world scenario. A pitched battle awaited them from this outer-worldly incursion. They had various tools at their disposal, but still, even a containment breach of one of their sites could prove too much of a strain on their resources and lead to the vast eradication of Earth's population. Item number SCP-9001. Object Class Thaumiel. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-9001 is under no circumstances allowed into either light or heavy containment. He is to be kept monitored at all times and administered various field assignments. His interactions with any SCPs is to be always strictly monitored, or better, to be avoided completely. Due to his heightened need for contest of prowess, he is to be allowed no more than 4 monthly missions or field assignments pertaining to his level, and at no point should it ever push his emotional state further. He is considered docile and is allowed free roam of sight apart from the aforementioned light and heavy containment. Due to this consistent and growing need to seek powerful entities, his designation of Object Class Thaumiel should constantly be questioned. Description: SCP-9001 is a humanoid alien standing at 175 centimeters or 5 feet 9 inches. His appearance is that of an average human of ethnicity. His strength, constitution, endurance, and all physical capabilities are leagues beyond what normal human is capable of. His abnormal strength seems to be supplied by something that the being labels as Ki, a life energy that all living beings possess. Further research on Ki should be conducted. From this Ki, he is able to produce pure energy and is able to expel it in forms of beams. He is also able to expel it from his body, giving him the ability of flight. These beams of energy are capable of destroying a mountain, evaporating a lake, or wiping out a city off the map. Further testing into these beams should be highly monitored, or better yet, avoided due to the risk of harm to the planet. His Ki is further utilized in a way that further boosts all of his attributes and manifests itself into pure energy. It alters his appearance. As stated previously, he is never to be pushed into a heavy emotional state in fear of activating. His previous fight with SCP-682 has proven to be a sign that he could be a great asset if he could control his unending craving for battle with strong opponents due to his evolving anomalous properties. And after cross-testing, assignments, and missions undergone by MTF Omega-7, SCP-9001 should be separated from other SCPs unless heavily supervised. The former director that fought for the utility of SCP-9001 put the file down and handed it over to his colleague. In such a short time, he had gone through such an ordeal of world-shattering events, and everything seemed to fall onto his hands. His torture at the hands of SCP-106 had been exhausting on his psyche. Even though physically he was fine, the lingering trauma had been almost unbearable. The thought of unleashing him again, if the regular means at containing the Saiyans failed, filled him with dread. They had no idea how powerful they were, but if they based them off of what Goku could do, and if their invasion would later lure the evil space tyrant Freiza, well, that would be world ending. The SCP Foundation were most concerned with their genealogy. Their inherent genetic makeup was troubling. These Saiyans were capable of evolving beyond comprehension. Each battle that they were in was as if their body was adapting to it to try to match their opponent's output. It was almost as if the director had a miniature SCP-682 in his hands, but one that was much more reasonable than the hard-to-destroy reptile. No wonder SCP-9001 was able to recontain the lizard before it could adapt. Opposite the weary director sat his energetic niece. She was tinkering away at the old equipment that arrived with the initial landing of SCP-9001 over 19 years ago. His niece had been born with a much higher potential than he could ever have. Although he wasn't in her life very much, he still loved her deeply. Yet he did not know why she chose to follow in his footsteps and forsake her future for something he did not deem for her. He had pleaded with her to reconsider, but being the genius that she was, she simply debated her way out of any argument, and her accolades and early acquisition of her doctorate had been a child's game to her, which impressed his superiors enough to add her to the SCP Foundation. She was an intellectual that surpassed him even at her young age of 20, but perhaps her best quality was her optimism and pride, something which evaded him. Bulma pulled out an earpiece with a green panel in front of it. She had salvaged it from the original pod that Goku arrived in. The technology was beyond the current planet's capabilities. She placed it near her ear, and it turned on. Before, it had displayed a language unknown to the SCP Foundation, but through Bulma's meddling, she was able to decipher and translate it to a language she could understand. Bulma looked at her uncle and sized him up. She scanned him and got back a reading of 4. The average human was a 5. Bulma tried to scan beyond the room, but thanks to the SCP's anti-key detection technology, she wasn't able to detect anything beyond this room. The tech was pretty useful. It could detect key signatures or the very essence of a being. The numbers indicated how powerful a being was. They had integrated the tech in their own surveilling systems, and if by some cruel joke the red alarms came alive and warned of a high possibility of landings within the next hour somewhere on Earth. Vegeta had been patient for long enough. He and his companion would soon reach Earth and seek their rightful place in the universe. He had previously been in contact with SCP-2399, and the sentient monstrosity of a robot had continuously warned them of the SCP Foundation, though none of this worried the prince, for he was the legendary Super Saiyan. Various hypersonic missiles peppered their transportations, an annoyance at best, thinks Vegeta. Their pods were meant to withstand coming into collision with asteroids and other space debris, but still, the audacity. They are continuously attacked as they pass SCP-179, pointing directly at them with a solemn look on her face. This interaction sends a chill down Vegeta's spine, as if to foreshadow what would happen as they break through Earth's atmosphere and land in a barren wasteland. The personnel monitoring the landing cheer as they successfully prevent the Saiyans from landing at one of their sites through the use of their hypersonic missiles. A small victory, but it was important to maintain morale as they were still in grave danger. But as they prepared their next phase of the plan, that's when they felt heat radiating, accompanied by a gust of wind. They never saw what made the hole through the door. Multiple scanners blinked, beeped, and oscillated all at once. In all of its confusion, one thing was very clear. Goku had broken containment and was headed directly towards the invading aliens. It had been years since Goku has had a fight. Well, a proper one at least. They had given him tests, but a lot of them were very, very mundane for the Saiyan warrior. He didn't know all the details of the new anomalous entities invading his homeland, nor the plan to combat them. All he knew was that they were going to weaken them first, and him and his team were saved as reservists in case the plan went awry. But this did not sit well with SCP-9001. He had to see if they could prove a challenge for him. It's all he ever lived for. Vegeta and Nappa's scouters picked up a strong key signature heading straight towards them, and without hesitation flew to meet the newcomer. The director pleaded with 9001 to return to follow orders, but Goku didn't respond back. The director reminded him of his child, Gohan, but sensing their key signatures quickly approaching him, he destroyed his earpiece and quickly met up with Nappa and Vegeta. The director was the main source of support for Goku's Thaumiel designation, a class for SCPs who could work alongside the Foundation against other anomalous objects and entities. Goku had already proven to be difficult to work with, and now they were heavily considering a new addition to Keter class and prepared for the worst if SCP-9001 could prove completely uncooperative. The Saiyans began talking, Nappa with his cluelessness and Vegeta with his untethered ego. They threatened Goku, or going by a Saiyan name Kakarot. They blame him for the lack of extermination of the population. Billions of key signatures were still present, yet they offered him a position on a team designed control over the theory of Frieza. They mentioned a brother that Goku did not know of nor care of. Goku's white gi reflected the sun's rays brightly, with only the speck of contrast being from the SCP insignia etched onto his chest. He ordered the Saiyans that they were now under the protection of the SCP Foundation and that they would need to come with him. The SCP Foundation had something that belonged to Vegeta. He orders Kakarot to stand down and show him where the SCP Foundation is hidden. Goku refuses, and Vegeta calls him a slave, and that he would have to make him obey the prince. A side-eye escaped from Nappa, as his prince's hypocrisy was obvious. Vegeta gave the sign, and within half a heartbeat, Nappa blitzed Goku and drop-kicked him. Lasting only a few seconds, a fury of blows were exchanged, along with coordinated dodges, parries, kicks, punches, grabs, tackles, and everything. Such a showcase of power, speed, and skill could only be demonstrated by a warrior race like the Saiyan. Vegeta crossed his arms and laughed maniacally. It was clear from the onset of the battle that Kakarot was nowhere near Nappa's power. From his scouter, he could pick up small, visible, and invisible drones recording the battle. They could watch. He didn't care. He was coming for them next. Here, he was getting absolutely manhandled by this beast of a person, and Goku loved it. His excitement for battle was visible on his face. He loved that they rejected his plea for them to flee. The SCP Foundation waited with bated breath until they could unleash their full plans. As Goku and Nappa continued fighting, he felt it once again, that power that seemed difficult to manifest, swelling from his back and spreading throughout him, that power that overwhelmed SCP-682. And again, he tapped into SCP-9001, erupts into a golden aura of pure, unadulterated energy. At this point, Vegeta loses his mind and stares at all at what he sees. Could it be, he thinks to himself, the legendary Super Saiyan? Impossible. It could only be him. And as that concludes, so does the fight. Nappa is sent hurtling towards the prince at such a speed that all he could do was guard himself from the impact. Unbeknownst to the Saiyans and even the SCP Foundation, SCP-2399 had snuck itself onto the pods of the Saiyans and was waiting and watching as the fight dragged on through one of its autonomous drones. He had witnessed the power before. Of course, he was once attached to SCP-9001. He knew that once this form was unleashed, there was no way that the Saiyan duo could stand a chance. Maybe if they worked together, but that seemed as far-fetched as destroying SCP-106. But Jupiter's big red spot wasn't a fool, and it came prepared. He had developed a nanomachine, another part of himself, to suppress something that he labeled as cells, something found only within Saiyans. He was sure that the SCP Foundation had already uncovered this, and was likely one of their plans to attack the Saiyans, with thanks to the blood and other tests performed on SCP-9001. SCP-2399 released the nanomachine. Goku proceeded to inhale them, and he very quickly lost his strength and power, making him lose his Super Saiyan status. Vegeta's delusions came back to him. It was just a fluke. No low-class warrior could possibly become the legendary Super Saiyan. Only him. Vegeta gave Kakarot one final chance to help him take over this world and take back his Saiyan pride and eradicate all who made him do their dirty work. In this world, And at this moment, Goku considered his proposal. His time as an SCP lapdog wasn't exactly the most rewarding. He was promised battles, yet they were not delivered. But he couldn't do what Vegeta asked of him. His son and the earth filled with innocent life were all still at risk. He couldn't stoop that low. He rejected the prince's offer. By the end of what was considered a battle, only one Saiyan stood victorious, and it was never in doubt that it was indeed the prince. Vegeta had tore right through his chest, leaving a gnarly hole where his SCP insignia once was proudly displayed. He felt his consciousness slip and he fell into darkness. Vegeta felt both pride and disappointment. Was that all Kakarot could do? His strength came and went quickly. Was that really the extent of a Saiyan? As if on cue, Vegeta catches from the corner of his eye a red disc hurtling his way. He was expecting a retaliation from the organization that Kakarot was working for, but such a primitive way of attacking. He raised his hand and blasted the disc, but the disc simply kept coming. Vegeta was not aware of what the disc was capable of, but he did not want to find out. He quickly flew out of the way, but the disc was persistent, and it seemed to be picking up speed. He flew quicker, but the disc matched his speed and even surpassed it. It seemed to have a mind of its own, but he picked up no key signature from it. Enough of this, he thought to himself. He decided he would simply just destroy it. He gained distance from the disc and fired. His Gallic gun. This did absolutely nothing, as the disc simply gained more momentum as it finally slammed into the prince. The disc went from red to purple in color as it fell from its impact. The disc stuck to his scouter and sucked him through the glass into a world of unknown. Various MTF squads deactivated their cloaking devices and dragged Nappa near Vegeta's scouter, sending him into the same place. They smashed the scouter, entrapping both of them within. A cheer could be heard from all of their earpieces as a crisis was averted for the time being. The Saiyans were thrown into a ruined city. Vegeta did not know what kind of trick they were playing on him, but he didn't like it, nor did he like the way Nappa was reaching out at him. Clearly, the warrior had his back demolished, but the prince spared no sympathy. He took his hand, launched him into the air, and disintegrated him in a blast of spite that'll teach him to fall in front of him. Ignorant to the SCP's Foundation's assets, the Prince of all Saiyans found himself in a dilapidated city. He began flying throughout the city, seeing various interesting displays of carnage and brutality. The most haunting to him was the destroyed flag of the Freiza army. Various skeletons of Freiza soldiers were strewn about the city, clutching onto them the flag of the evil tyrant Freiza. SCP-093 is a stone red disc. It will change colors depending on the individual that holds it. The colors seem to represent the regrets of the user. If it is not on a mirror-like surface, it will quickly seek one out, accelerating at insane speed until it reaches one. Upon contact, no damage is dealt, but it does open up a portal to another dimension based on the aforementioned color. The dimension in question is plagued by shadow beings and monstrosities, but the worst seems to come from the psychological trauma that it causes. Vegeta's color on contact was a light purple, and it seems to alter time because from the perspective of the Foundation, as soon as the prince went in, just as quickly he came out. But first, let's see what really transpired with Vegeta. Just being inside this dimension made Vegeta feel on edge. Paranoia gripped his mind as he struggled to identify any enemies lurking around. With no scouter and no sense of direction, the Saiyan prince began to wander around in his desolate landscape, getting bothered by strange figures lurking in the background and sparse evidence of Frieza's army somewhere around here. Did they send me off planet? Was he near Frieza? The Saiyan prince pondered this, but no clear evidence came forth to clear his doubt. Enough of this, he thought to himself. I'll just reassess from space. As he began flying, he felt a fog thicken around him and start to weigh on him. As he ascended, he felt the fog start to weigh in on him, making it much more difficult to break through the atmosphere. The sky had very little light emanating from it. He felt a shadow cross over him, a big one, almost blocking out every source of light around him. He could make out a silhouette, a gigantic humanoid was beyond the fog. Vegeta never heard the slow hand moving towards him, but he did feel the impact as a gigantic fist slammed into him with great force, cracking his armor and sending him flying back down to the surface of this peculiar world. He caught a glimpse of the hand, a brownish red of sort. He crashed back on the surface, wounded and gasping for air. Suddenly, he felt another hand tug at his arm as it gripped him and pulled him close. A smaller, yet still deadly, half-bodied humanoid looked down on him and bit into the prince. Vegeta quickly expelled energy from his body and blew the creature away as the Saiyan prince regained his composure. What were these creatures? The creature wailed at Vegeta as it crawled towards him, much faster than what he anticipated. The Saiyan warrior quickly hurled energy blast at it, peppering it with holes. The creature wailed much louder, but did not slow down. The prince cupped his hands and sent out a Gallic gun, consuming the creature in the beam, evaporating it from existence. Days passed by as he floated around the city, eating whatever he could find and killing these half-bodied beings until he couldn't take the sanity loss anymore. He couldn't sleep and he couldn't think, and most importantly, his ego was damaged. Did they think they could just lock him away in this hell dimension and be rid of him? Him, the prince of all Saiyans? He decided then he would not waste a single second in here. He flew back up into the fog to confront the gigantic being he had faced before. Fists and energy beams were exchanged in this confrontation. This monster was about the size of a small country, and it was floating on top of the thick fog, which made it harder for Vegeta to fight in. He was slower, weaker, and much more frustrated, but his pride to be the best was what kept pushing him forward. He had time to think, and that form, he knew that Kakarot had tapped into that legendary form, and he had to have it as well. Was Kakarot also fighting these monstrosities? If so, he wouldn't pull his punches. He would show him and every single one of his caretakers who exactly the Prince of all Saiyans is. Hours, or perhaps days had passed. The prince did not know, but he was getting repeatedly thrown back into the ground, and again he kept rising until he finally was able to destroy this being in a ferocious show of power, elevating his ki output to a level never before felt by him. Nearly reaching his elusive form, he was able to crack the very fabric of reality as he screamed at the top of his lungs. He cupped his hands and finally unleashed his final flash, beating SCP-093 not only in its monsters, but somehow ripping a dimensional hole and leaping through it, leading him back to where he was first, sealed away. Beneath his feet, in what he believed to be a barren, rocky wasteland, began to slide open, revealing a mammoth cavity. It was filled with seawater and expanded deep, connecting into the ocean. The anxiety and paranoia came back to him, but much worse. Beneath the water, he could somehow begin to sense an entity. This sixth sense he was developing. It worked almost like a scouter, but much more intrusive in his mind. Vegeta began to scramble for answers as whatever was coming from the surface was getting closer and closer until he could see a shadow beneath the waves. He felt fear, the same fear that conquered his mind while in the presence of his oppressor. In a crash of waves and teeth, a giant eel barged through the opening and swallowed the prince whole and took him into the depths. SCP-3000 is a colossal sea creature with an undetermined length that best resembles a moray eel. It secretes a compound that induces memory loss or alteration. Although sustenance isn't needed, it is still a predator that can dispatch prey at high speeds despite its length. While near it, individuals will experience a sense of pain, paranoia, fear, and panic, and above all else, memory loss. It is theorized to consume the spark of human consciousness. Interactions with the Saiyan race is yet to be determined. Vegeta felt himself slipping further and further into the belly of the beast. He was already battered from his ordeal with SCP-093, and being thrown into another battle wasn't ideal for him. He was fatigued, in pain, in darkness, and in fear. Yet, he still had his pride, and he could still fight. He began powering up and began building up ki in his hand. From his palm came a light, a ball of sorts, comprised of the same energy that the moon gave off. He held it in his palm of his hands and felt it, that same power that gripped Goku when he first landed. Now, the Saiyan Prince, this primordial power to destroy, he began growing larger and larger within SCP-3000 until the serpentine creature found it hard to contain him. With a laser from the Ozaru's mouth, he tore a gaping hole right into SCP-3000 in order to escape. But the main problem was that he was underwater and felt the pressure start to build up as the body of SCP-3000 wrapped around his leg and began dragging him deeper and deeper into darkness. But perhaps due to his own artificial moon still stuck within the eel, or the fact that the paranoia began to take a hold of Vegeta, he could sense the creature in the darkness, and he could tell his power level. And although near invincible, it did not surpass the prince. Instead of running away and returning to the surface, Vegeta began swimming towards it. It coiled its body on the prince, but he didn't care. He knew he could win. He slammed his body on the creature and began biting it and clawing, trying to damage it. SCP-3000 let out a wail that increased his panic and fear. Vegeta began to forget what he was doing here or what he was fighting, but all he had to know was that whatever he was fighting, it was his enemy, and it needed to die. And the training drilled into the prince since his birth did not falter. He further wrestled the creature, ripping into its body and spilling its blood. The eel tried to circle around and bite into the giant monkey, causing Vegeta to lose oxygen. The pressure was immense underwater, and he was further dragged down. He could feel his head begin to collapse. He had to finish this right now. Vegeta bit back and fired an energy blast so powerful that it ripped the serpent in half. But the creature did not let up. It further sank its jaws into the flesh that saw many battles and did not let go. The air in the lungs of the prince was exhausted, and his mind began to drown in thoughts of fear and death. He cupped his hairy hands and fired one last time his Gallic gun. It tore SCP-3000's body further into pieces as it finally let go of the Saiyan warrior. The blast escaped the water, traveled far into space, creating a spectacle for half of that side of the hemisphere. Vegeta quickly began to fly up, gasping for air. He roared in fury as he filled his lungs with air. It hurt every time he breathed, thanks to his collapsed ribcage. The creature gave one last surprise attack and chomped on the Saiyan's tail. The prince lost his Ozaru form. He saw SCP-3000 finally succumb to its wounds, and he sank into the abyss from which it came. The prince made it back on land, exhausted beyond belief, and seemingly at the mercy to whoever was waiting for him. He begins vomiting up seawater, and his memories slowly start to return to him. His escape is blocked from all sides as NTF squads fill the gaps. Soldiers point their guns at the prince, daring him to make a move. He couldn't, even if he wanted to. All of his energy was expended, though he thinks he could kill all of them if he really tried. But did they have another monster for him to fight? He would surely die. Before he could conclude his decision on attacking, he was littered with tranquilizers all over his body, finally putting an end to his rampage and mayhem. And again, he flew through meat, metal, ground, and finally the open air. The Prince of all Saiyans broke free once again from his containment. But alas, as all other attempts and his invasion onto the earth, it too failed. As if being held down by an invisible leash, the prince strangled himself on the air. Not being able to fly any further into the sky, he had nothing on him besides his underwear. They had even amputated his tail. These damned humans, thought the prince to himself. His rage at this moment knew no bounds, as his power swelled like never before, overcoming his last power trip he had when he was fighting the endless sea serpent SCP-3000. The machine had warned him of this planet's unexplainable phenomena and the organization that held them all together, ready to unleash them upon any would-be distractions to their populace everyday lives. They had played the prince and his companion from the very beginning, redirecting their craft to their advantageous battlefield, one where they never stood a chance. He felt the air from his lungs slowly start to vacate as his face turned purple from the lack of oxygen. This invisible leash was keeping him grounded, and it kept him from flying further. It was choking him. He finally felt the strength in his arms dissipate and his consciousness fade. The prince slowly fell from the sky, slamming into the barren wasteland, not too dissimilar from where he landed. Dark figures emerged from their concealment and reported back to the site. SCP-9001-2 neutralized and recontainment in progress. She walked into the observation room. The doctor in charge of the study and experimentation of the new addition to SCP-9001. Young, ferocious, smart, but above all else, impatient. She sipped her coffee and set it down beside the assistant. Again, she exclaimed, "It's only been a few days, and already they had to move him over to a different containment cell." It seemed that the ones that held SCP-9001 were meant only for him because he was cooperative. This one was clearly the opposite. She scoffed at the alien warrior for such advanced technology. He was rude and quite stupid. The blue-haired doctor watched as he was quickly restrained and brought back to his confinement, moved further down, and with more containment procedures. Clearly, it wasn't meant to be allowed anywhere near their main sites. They had made a special holding place just for him, and she was thankful they did. She returned to her other task, that of unlocking the secrets of the weird eyepiece that both of the extraterrestrial warriors had on them. They were only able to recover the short one's piece. It had been damaged thanks to the scuffle, but it was intact. She had spent the last couple of days deciphering it and translating it, the unknown language, into what she knew. Although the piece was functional, it was incoherent and alien, displaying some sort of combat level of individuals, though how it measured such a strange value and transcribed it into numerical values was still unknown to her. She continued working on the communications. It had to be connected to something. She began fiddling with it all day and late into the night as she tried different radio wavelengths and frequencies. She was able to make it tap into local broadcasts, but that wasn't what she was looking for. Until finally, after hours of handling it, she was able to tap into a broadcast that was far away. An unknown figure spoke through the piece, sounding concerned yet condescending. She dared not speak and quickly shut it off. She pondered as to what she just did. Could it have possibly picked up her location from just a couple of seconds of communications? She doubted it, as the Foundation had good, covert defenses in place to protect against radio waves. She just wasn't sure, but in her heart of hearts, she somehow knew she fucked up. Ruminating on its recent success, the sentient AI stirred and computed. SCP-2399 was so close to completion thanks to the work of its autonomous drones. They had siphoned a good amount of energy from the planet. Who knew that instead of material, he just needed pure energy? The energy produced by the Saiyans felt like a miniature sun, but without the burn. 2399 was kicking itself for not capturing the Saiyan when he had the chance. But perhaps it was for the better. All he needed was a bit more. The drones of SCP-2399 were like a hive, feeding its never-satiated queen. They repaired and hunted for material, anything to help their master achieve completion. That's when their alarms went off, first beeping off something entering the immediate solar system, a warning that something was flying past the Oort cloud, then zipping past Pluto and into the Kuiper belt. They then picked up the rest of the signatures that were instantaneously transferred to SCP-2399. An army of something was coming in fast. Their defenses were always at maximum thanks to the miniature war they had going on with the SCP Foundation. But this was beyond any power the robot had felt. Whatever this army was, some chose to land close to home, with most landing nearby on Ganymede, and then some on Io, the icy moons that orbited Jupiter. Of course, Jupiter itself was its own defensive mechanism. No biological being could survive much time here on the surface because, well, there was no surface for miles and no breathable air. But somehow, whoever these intruders were, the big red spot of Jupiter knew that they had no care about some gas, as their numbers quickly descending upon the big red spot of Jupiter. Goku, after the struggle with the Saiyans, wasn't in good condition. The nanomachines inhaled that suppressed the S cells were still wreaking havoc within his system. It drained him of his ki, which in turn made him lethargic. The Foundation's doctors were already aware of such technology, but never used it. Whoever made the play wasn't part of their roster. Could it have been the Chaos Insurgency, who was watching the whole time? The Foundation quickly made their sorts of antibodies to fight off the invasive nanomachines, successfully avoiding their weapon from terminating well before its full utility could be unleashed. The director in charge of the overseeing of SCP-9001 could not help him now. There was a war brewing between whoever these creatures were, and it wasn't going to be held back by moral or ethical quandaries. He only hoped that the child he helped raise would somehow, one day, find his own way. An assistant walked up to him discreetly and urged him to attend an emergency meeting. They briefed the director on what was happening, mainly the arrival of a rogue army stationed on Ganymede and Io, with their main objective, seemingly the Earth. The director could only gasp and accept at the carnage that was to come. Now, they really had to live up to their namesake and protect their home from whatever this was. A saucer-like ship, along with various individual pods, had surfaced all around the moons of Jupiter. SCP-189 did not know exactly who to point at, as the heat signatures numbered in the hundreds. Thanks for watching. Next time, we'll tackle the Freiza Saga. Like, comment, and subscribe. You won't regret it.